Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spin Rack, and we also have
Calvin Ellis ready to rock.
today we're going to talk about that comic book great, the person who's considered the top writer when we're not looking at either Bendis or Morrison or Miller. It's Alan Moore. He's comic books top guy. He's every time someone gets close to the throne, people remember him, or he does an interview, and then he comes back to the top spot, and everyone just goes and they just worship him and say this, that, and the other, right? So basically, um, similar to how when Grant Morrison said, "Hey, Batman killed the Joker at the end of Killing Joke," and it kind of spread like wildfire, and people started saying that because they followed the top guys. Alan Moore started tearing apart superheroes, and which he had kind of done in the 80s when he finished Watchmen and left DC. He kind of did that, and then at some point he needed some money, so he started working on superheroes again. He did an interview where he was tearing down superheroes, which was going to show that they unearthed, and he did it in Men's Health magazine. I don't know why this would be in Men's Health, but I guess they're trying to say that superheroes aren't healthy for us, right? And here we go. Watchmen creator Alan Moore thinks today's superheroes are embarrassing. Oh wow, what a as they calls them the white supremacist dream of the master race, and it's just like, okay. And this, he starts to complain about the present day hero and the TV shows, which is only the same. It's the same instance of having the western being the big deal, the cop movies being the big deals. Basically, all these things of having someone who, and the superheroes a little more, well, until they keep making the dark ones. If you do the regular Batman TV show, this was enough. We use that as a template. That's the upstanding citizen who's a superhero who's fighting crime against stuff that the police couldn't do. Right? That's the template. But his talk about is of impact of superheroes on pop culture is both tremendously embarrassing and not only a little worrying. Right? So he's saying it's good for 13-year-olds, but now that the public is now, it's still having kids go out to it, and adults can either find the enjoyment in it the same way they do Star Wars or not. But this has now trickled down to the audience, and when they talk about the Watchmen, they talk about this thread here is that the Watchmen was kind of, where is this? Yeah, it's like more probably doesn't need to explain his aversion to superhero worship, and it says that the Watchmen was superhero worship when it's not. Outside of one of them being a successful, moving away from being a superhero to a successful businessman using all of his smarts in Ozymandias, right? That was the angle of the character, but no one worships Rorschach. No one worships the comedian. Comedian works behind the scenes, and what's the name of who's that? Dr. Manhattan is kind of behind the scenes now, also doing his stuff for the government. So it's not actually worship. It's the equivalent of, in my opinion, of the Cold War. But at the same time, everything, Doomsday Clock, all that stuff is the same stuff that happened with us in the Cold War between Russia, and the only difference is that Nixon isn't still president. So it's not that it's not that much different. It was a real, in my opinion, it was no, in my not in my opinion, it was the real world superheroes dealing with the Cold War. Even the Dark Knight had some of that. So I said a lot to my start. Please jump in. I did all of my gags. Please jump in. Sorry for jumping in there and have me having all my emotion to it. Go ahead, please.
Well, just to remind everybody, when they interviewed Moore years ago about Watchmen, and his direct words were that he wanted to write the Moby Dick of comics. Now, a lot of people might think that, oh, he wanted to write this great work of literature, but if you read Moby Dick is a novel that encompasses prose, poetry, and playwriting within the text, if you've ever read it. And if you look at Watchmen, he has the same approach. You have the standard comic book sequential art with word balloons and captions. He also has metafiction in the fact that there's a story being told within the story, with the kid reading the comic. Okay, you have the prose pieces in the back. Okay, and I believe you have the prose pieces in the back, and you may have some. It's been years since I've read it, but you may have some other sections as well that I'm not readily remembering. So when he says that, yeah, that's what he was after. He was writing this movie. He was writing this Moby Dick of comics. The idea that of not worshiping your heroes, that's nowhere present in that text. He can say what he wants about it, but having that much, having read it, that's not there. As you just said, these aren't heroes.
Yes.
These aren't heroes. These are more like anti-heroes, if you will, maybe even mystery men, but they're not heroes in the sense of what we would get from the DC Comics heroes. The comedian is at best an anti-hero, and Ozymandias is a villain.
Yeah, yeah. He's a comic book, but he's a classic, comic book villain as far as his plot. Like that, he's a behind the scenes plotting this thing outside of being a businessman. But yeah, sorry.
He's a stand villain. Something happens that traumatizes him, and then he decides he has to go this. And that thing that happened to traumatize him was him losing the fight to the comedian early in his career.
Oh God.
And that sets him on this path, because he has to reevaluate. I'm supposed to be this, smart, this and this guy. I'm getting taken out by this guy. And then you throw in some rhetorical flourishes in terms of Dr. Manhattan. The other character, the other characters, your mileage may vary, but to be honest, if you take them out, you don't really lose anything in terms. You don't really lose anything in terms of the whole of the story. The fact that Night Owl can't, the fact that he can't perform sexually unless he's in costume or having to do something superhero is that's just some Alan Moore stuff at the end of the day. But it's the same type of titillation that he would put inside of a story, and it does make it different from the classic superheroes. The whole what he was talking about hey, be careful about worshiping your heroes, that was the treatment he wrote in Twilight of the Gods that he wanted to do with DC Comics, where we were going to be looking at the DC superheroes in the future, and there was going to be, say, a House of El, a House of Wayne, a House of Wonder Woman, and a House of Shazam, if you will. And I think DC saw the part where Captain Marvel and Mary Marvel were going to be in this incestuous relationship, and they were like, "What the hell is wrong with you, Brits? If it's not buggery, it's this nonsense." He was like, "No, we're not doing it. We're not doing it." That might be a little bit closer to what he's saying here, but to be quite honest, at this state of the day, it just sounds like sour grapes from Alan Moore. Anything that he says about comics and superheroes at this point just sounds like sour grapes. And I could get with him to a certain point with Watchmen, where he had an agreement. DC showed him, hey, this is how it works, with these particular contracts. We've been in this business a lot longer than you. And to be honest, I would have thought, hey, if he was that concerned about it, this is, the company of Siegel and Schuster. If that right there did not, convince you that, hey, maybe I need to get an attorney or look somebody over it, that have somebody look it over, that is definitely on you. But it's been such a long period of time, and it's obvious that he still is not, well, he's never going to get over the whole situation with Watchmen, and anything done with Watchmen, he, still is unhappy with. He's unhappy with superheroes unless he can make a buck off it. And he's not making a buck off it right now. So of course, he'll come over here and say some sensationalist comments about them, definitely get some press. People respect his previous writings when it comes to comics, the great stuff that he did with DC Comics. So, and let me not just say it like that, the great stuff he did with DC Comics and beyond. But the criticism really just falls flat. It just at this point, it's just sour grapes. I'm very certain that if he was being tapped for stuff and writing and getting some residuals and some of the money, I think we would hear a totally different tune from Alan Moore.
Well, there's an interview that was actually with a British interviewer. I think it was on YouTube. I'll find it at some point at some point. But they were talking to him about, like, especially the League. And this, I'm just adding this in, is that there's just a rock star attitude to this. To be like, I don't want to work for Marvel. Marvel made us use Miracle Man. I don't want to accept money for this stuff. They're going to ruin our stuff. Now, when he did Watchmen, he was very much interested in the movie version. He was just kind of like happy it was a success. He was thinking about, movie. There were talks of that happening. There was a lot of buzz around it. there was even a talk of a part two to it, which didn't, of course, happen. But at the same time, as it was going on, and he'd done stuff for Image and had the League, you know, I mean, it's okay to change your mind about different things, but it's kind of hard to be like saying that these works are now, this is my thing of hero worship. And then the League here, I don't accept money from these movie people. And he did accept money from the movie people. It wasn't until he said, hey, there's a rule in comics that they would give us money and we would just take it and go. They would never make the movie, right? So we get the money, and he said, and they called it what's the name? Getting money for old rope. And he's like saying, yeah, getting money for old rope. And then he's like, but then when I heard they were making it, and then I was like, and he's like, but like, come on. And like, he's like, yeah, you're trying to sell it. You're okay with, like getting the money with the deals. But that was the history in comics, that they would ask to do the movie, and then you would just get money, and they never make the movie. And it's like, like this kind of a backwards way of thinking. So he developed the Rockstar thing to say, I'll never accept any money for any of this stuff because it's not going to come out how he wanted it. But the thing of it is, he also, if we go into it deeper, like what you bringing up with Twilight, is also, the super folks that he borrowed a lot from. These things, appropriated, stole, plagiarized, any of those things. And
I like outright theft.
So, and that's what led him to be having, that's what, well, I guess that's why Morrison was disillusioned, because he was getting into comics and he was a writer, and then he wrote the thing Drivel, complaining about that aspect. So ultimately this thing of us having the like the Pied Piper thing, where we follow along with these writers when they change their mind, and they're just like, ugh, this thing, comic books, superheroes, they're just so this, that, and the other. And it's like a half gas Wortham type of statements that he's trying to make. And this is like, yeah, I'm not sure I'm enjoying the crop of superheroes and comics and this, that, and the other. But
oh no, without a doubt, the stuff that we've got on the stands right now, trash.
Yes,
without a doubt,
it's definitely that. But for the reasons he's talking, is different. Like they're utilizing the superheroes for all a bunch of everything that's supposed to be progressive and whatnot. And Morris is saying it's going to tear down. Like, no, it's definitely not. Basically, someone's going to run out of interest in the movies or the comics, and who knows? Maybe it'll reverse back and then people do some more retro type stuff. Who knows? But trying to go into it and saying this is unhealthy for, like, no, that sort of stuff, this is just basic entertainment. It's just like saying the movies are going to turn people into this, and maybe you can say that, but we look at movies as the problem, and we don't look at like the 24-hour news thing of that sort of thing and someone getting involved. But I'm getting too heavy in that sense. But I'll go into more. I just don't like the Pied Piper aspect and everyone filtering it into their discussions.
He should just call Superman a fascist and get it over with.
That's the other thing. When he, at some point he fell out of love with the Killing Joke, but he did like the aspect, which was right when his writing style is saying, hey, these two characters are stuck in this thing where one of them is going to kill each other. And he means that they're in the endless freaking thing because they're fictional characters. So there's always going to be a Batman. So he's going to basically talking to each other as fictional characters. And that aspect is not what I enjoy in a Batman. And I enjoy Batman, the Joker doing something, and the Batman stopping him. That's it. I can suspend disbelief and not get into them in this sort of rat race together. Ultimately, it's only a rat race because Bill Finger decided to kill him like the second time, and Ed is like at the end, no, the Joker did not actually die, and we'll tell you next issue what happened. I think Batman #1, or maybe it might be the issue after that where he appears and they kill him and he's not actually dead. Ed is like, now wait a second, you're not. Why would you guys kill this guy? This is a great villain. That's the only reason why Batman doesn't kill him. Like ultimately he would. I think Alan Davis had a good point. It's like we know basically if you do something too bad, the hero is going to take him out. They're not going to. You do something to Commissioner Gordon or Barbara Gordon, he's going to put him in the ground. But it's a, he's a Joker. You can't get rid of him. But this thing of following along and listening, and yeah, it's good. I mean, if you like the person, you're a fan of them, that's fine. But then when they change their mind and you don't say, "What? I'm reading this Watchmen for hero worship in all my movies," or this, and he proves that he was against hero worship from the Watchmen. When the Watchmen is more like like superheroes as police, like the cops and the people hating them. Like who watches the Watchmen is a negative statement from the people. Like
Yep.
it's not a thing where you're supporting them and they worship them. No, they just use them as government. That's the most basic thing. Everything is government. Like he can say that that's how Nick Fury got tied into the Avengers and the Fantastic Four in the Heroes Reborn. So ultimately, I don't like this type of thing. He's Alan Moore. Whenever he does something, it's going to be, people are going to enjoy it. They're going to look past some of the stuff of his writing because it's an enjoyable style. But come on, guys, like it's like you spent all that time doing superhero comic books and now say, "Hey, it's bad. This is bad." When you needed the money, you gave us some
You
strong.
gotta put that ellipsis. You gotta put that ellipsis when he says this. Like it's bad ellipsis that I'm not getting any money.
But he
That,
like
that's all this is. There's no higher platform. This is just sour grapes. I'm not getting any money. Okay, I'm not getting any money. I should be reaping. I got screwed out of my deal. Or I mean, to be honest, it's a fair enough deal if you read it. But it becomes the same thing that a lot of these guys go into. Nobody ever anticipates. Okay, I think the only time it worked out is with the guys at Image, where Liefeld goes in. He's like, look, if I'm selling 100,000 copies, that's $100,000. If I at a buck a book, I'm okay. And what does he get? He gets 1,000,000 copies. You're like, what? Where it turns out that actually worked in their favor. But a lot of times these guys, they create this stuff, they enter into agreements, and then they look and they're like, oh wow, this is great. This is pretty good. Oh, I get the rights back, right? No, we only get the rights back if we stop publishing this thing. If it's a hit, why would we stop publishing it?
well, I think someone who did a friend of mine played me a gag where they had person imitating Moore and a person imitating Morrison, and they had an argument, and it's like saying, if you got screwed over by DC, why would you give him V for Vendetta? It's just like it's some of the things of like taking the money and selling off Tom Strong to Wildstorm. Like some of the things you just do that, and I get it. I understand that you had this deal, but at the same time, DC isn't in a place to stop publishing the Watchmen. Like it's too big. Like it's not in a, there's no place. If it failed, yeah, he'd be like, take it. But like, they spent the money on the Charlton characters, and they wanted to do a Charlton series, which he definitely wouldn't have owned that. But they kind of like had this big hit, and it's like the one that's even it might have edged out the Dark Knight just slightly, but at the same time, and both of them dealing with the same subject matter. The Dark Knight is dealing with everything Cold War possible, police, the Russia, the nuclear stuff is in there, and you had the same stuff in Watchmen, just two different takes on it, and it's the understanding that what's the name is not owning it. It's like, hey, this thing is you're making a ton of money off. Well, you can make a ton of money off of the comic if he's not taking money from the yearly sales of Watchmen or I guess he didn't. He would definitely not take money from the before Watchmen or the TV shows. But I don't know. I just think these statements every time he gets said, it's almost like you turn it back into you know going back to the Mystic Seer and listening to him and saying, yes, you're right. This is tearing down our society, this hero worship. And it's like those superheroes movies are just cop movies and gag stories that they've been doing for years. Like
That's
it's
malarkey.
huh?
I said, no, that's malarkey. And the Dark Knight is a perfect. See, the Dark Knight is closer to what he's saying, only in the reverse, where it's like, hey, this is why we need heroes, because
Mm,
one of
yeah.
the things that's going on in the Dark Knight is that the government has failed us. You know,
Yes.
the government said we're going to get rid of the heroes. Okay, we're going to get rid of them. These guys are running around. They're not sanctioned. We'll keep Superman under, under the blanket, so to speak. But we won't. Everybody else, you guys got to go. And then what happens? You go to a place like Gotham. You got crime rampant, got gangs running around, and it's only when the people put their faith in a hero and then put the faith in themselves as well that they start making that turnaround. That's one of the themes right there. And Watchmen is not about that at all. Watchmen is about, oh goodness, it's almost like the beckoning of a totalitarian system. I mean,
Yep. Yeah.
that's where he's going with the whole thing. And I understand it because this is a guy who's coming out of Great Britain. He's coming out of the UK under Thatcher. And a lot of that's what they felt like under Thatcher. I mean, that's one of the themes that he was exposing in when he was doing Miracle Man. So it shouldn't be very surprising. It's just this. I mean, a lot of guys. I mean, guys like me would love to have had the opportunities that Alan Moore had to write, and if to be able to make these contributions. I thought what he did with America's Best Comics was just a whole bunch of fun at
Yes.
the end of the day, and he was finally like, okay, good, he's there with it, and then he goes back and does this type of stuff. I'm like, dude, you've had an opportunity to make a really good impact on comics, and every time you say this, I don't believe you. I don't believe you still don't write comics. I don't believe that you have this feel about superheroes either, because I know I am betting you any amount of money the first time Superman and Batman hit public domain that this guy has a story about them. Okay, it may be a story.
Well,
It may be a story. It may be a story about totalitarianism and rape. But hey, I'm certain he'll have a story at the end of the day. So I just don't believe him when he says this. He genuinely loves these characters. Okay, there's comic books are for the young and the young at heart. And the guys who enjoy them are the guys where the boy inside has never died and still looks forward to that next issue and keeps reading because they hope that the next issue is going to be better. He's still there. As much as he wants to play the crotchety, curmudgeon, crabby old man, he's still there at the end of the day, and he's just waiting. Because I'm telling you, he's got the red phone on his desk, and as soon as that thing rings, hey, Moore, you ready? I'll be there. I'm right there. I'm not signing any contracts. That's not how we work. Okay, I'll sign.
yeah, that's the thing. It's like, all right, I have no interest in continuing this. Hey, Jim Lee, you want to take the rest of this for the rest on and just give me a residual thing on this? But let's go to the actual thing, right? The crazy part about it is one of his more superhero things. I mean, obviously, America's Best and Tom Strong. You can even go. I always like Supreme scenes, even though it has a Silver Age Superman feel. It has a lot of his Captain Britain and the multiverse stuff in. But the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, even though it has all this dark stuff, it's totally like a Avengers type of thing where the characters we have Mina, who's the Mina, and obviously Alan Quartermain, who are the upstanding heroes, and then they make a solid hero out of Mr. Hyde. He does things that people love for some strange reason. Where I can't say much about Nemo because he just drives the car. Like that's all he does in the series. He don't have anything from this thing. And ultimately, I knew that the Invisible Man was going to go bad, so that's what kind of killed the series for me. But the heart of those characters, those three characters, are them doing the heroics that you'd see the Avengers do. The only thing is they didn't have them do the hand together like the Avengers, which we see the Avengers movie basically was that sort of thing. These coming together for a reason and handling business. And that's
First,
the book that he did in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That's what the heroes are about, not this nonsense of hero worship and all that stuff that he wants to complain about. That these dumb movies are going to turn into the whites. Come on, stop it.
well, he's got to say that because that's going to get the traction. That's going to get the press. That's going to get on the AP wire at the end of the day. Though, I mean, the first two, I thought the first two League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the first series and the second series, best work. Everything that came after trash, it just totally fell off. And I caught on to that late. I think I caught on to that like issue 5 of the second series when Hyde had caught up to Mister the Invisible Man and decided that he would bugger him. I was like, oh, what the hell?
Well,
Like,
that's the thing, and
what's going on here? I had to do a whole bunch of back reading.
yeah. Well, that's one of the things is like a point where you look at this, and I think in the second series. Well, I didn't like I have having the. It's like having Loki, having the Joker, any of these guys on the team, having the Invisible Man. You know what he's gonna do. You know he's gonna turn on you, which of course he did. It's not in the anti-hero type of way. But then there's another bit where it's just like he has a lot of Harvey Kurtzman, a lot of Mad Magazine, where you have a lot of things in the panel because there's a bit in there where what was it when Mina and Alan Quatermain has sex and it's this passionate thing and she has a scarf off and then she says not what you expected and then he turns with his eyes to the other way and he's like and then next thing you know he has a caption. He said the fornicators. Okay, kids. Like saying, what kid is reading this book? Like, come on, like stop writing it. Like, I guess it's because obviously, this literature that children have read at that periods of time, but it's just like the people who are the demographic for this book is it was like 20 at that point, 20 something, mid 20s when this thing came out. This is like stop with your gags, but ultimately it shows that at least the heart of it, and then it turned Mina and what's the name running around saving the universe in the other series. It's still trying to do the hero dynamic, and that's the dynamic, not this thing of what Wortham, like basically saying Wortham is right and this is tearing us down. It's like, how did Alan Moore become Wortham? So ultimately, that's the last thing I got to say about this. I could go on for a while, going through his work and saying this is the issue I have, but like some of the stuff in there is so much. He has so much stuff in his work that you always have to you find some way to appreciate it, even when it goes left. So that's the last thing I gotta say. But don't follow this sort of thing. Watchmen is not a statement on superhero worship, and don't follow. If you like the superhero movies, go ahead and watch them. Don't be like us and complain. Well, we don't complain about them saying it's going to tear down society and turn into a white supremacist, something or another. What are your last? You can say you don't have to be your last words. What do you if you want any other topic on this you want to go into? I'm fine.
We don't complain about the films because we think they're going to tear down society. We complain about them because they're trash and we want them good. That's why we complain about them. Anytime because we go out, we're still kids at heart. Okay, so we want to come over here and enjoy ourselves, and then we look and they adulterate it with all this adult bizwas, and we're like, we don't want to deal with this. We just came here to watch Iron Man save the day. We came over here to watch Cap throw the shield, beat some dudes, and and look cool doing it. We came over here to watch Superman push a planet, and instead we got to sit through all this stuff where they want to make it suitable for adults, and it's not about making it suitable for adults. It's about reminding adults what it was like to be a kid.
Yeah.
That sense of wonder. They keep screwing that up. Okay, when they got it right, it wasn't because we made the costumes more realistic, and the people know the people don't run around in these costumes. They already know they're not doing it. These chicks don't run around in this stuff. I don't care how much you make it look more realistic. It's still an outfit. Okay, and they would never be caught dead walking down the street in it or any sort of functionality in our world. In this world, it works.
Yeah.
About the verisimilitude that Richard Donner was talking about with Superman, but with more, again, sour grapes, and I think we're well past the idea that comic books will be the forerunner of the downfall of Western society. Be it the downfall of Western society, the rise of white supremacy. It's not going to come. It's not going to come through a comic book because most of the guys just buy it for the covers now anyway, and put it in a box. So they're not reading whatever the material is that's supposed to bring them to the dark side. You guys really messed up because they're not getting past the cover. So you don't have to worry about that. Hey, well, you know what? It's 2023. Superman and Batman go public domain in like another 11 years. So we gotta watch him.
But that's the thing. I don't have someone who complains so much about DC stealing his Watchmen, and then say, "Hey, other writers have played in there in the public domain. Why can't I?" It's like, no, you're saying this your creation should stay with you. Are you trying to send back money to the state or something like that? No, you're saying I can play in this thing because the rules work in my favor. Yay! That's the thing that's kind of nutty to me that he just jumped to the public domain. But I mean, and it's very interesting. Well, I didn't know that. I thought that was an idea that he had, but I didn't know that there were already writers like dealing with the same, dealing in that. I forget the writer's name that was doing using public domain characters to do different stories and having them meet each other, which is kind of the basis of the league. But it was some sort of a series of books where they had literary characters meet each other. But it's basically because it's public domain. I guess he read them when he was younger and very much was enamored by it. So, but
Dark Horse did Dark Horse Comics was doing that with like, you would have Tarzan meet Sherlock Holmes,
Mhm.
that type, that type of stuff. But those are what he did with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was he applied the Avengers effect
Mhm.
to the league, or Justice League, if you will, to the league, where I'm going to put together this group, and this is going to be like a superhero team, if you will, a Victorian superhero team with these particular characters, and it works. So that's where he was going with that with that particular jaunt that he was doing. But
Mhm.
hey, just sour grapes, sour grapes. Yeah, that's all I can say regarding more in this. He knows how to get some press, and in 11 years from now, once that watch of his goes off, we know who watches that Watchman. He's going to
Wow.
look. He's gonna go. He's gonna go for it. It's the lowest hanging fruit. I would be shocked if he did not. He's probably already got the script done.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, they done what his last work was cinema something, that cinema thing that he did. So he's kind of due to come back and do something. But yeah, I mean, he's already played in the public domain, and we'll see what happens. I don't know if he would do it for that long, or maybe he would. Who knows? He could have had whatever leftover scripts he wanted to do for the next year of Supreme and turn it into his own Superman story or
I mean, it's
whatever.
basically going to be if I was, I mean, this is Alan Moore. Superman goes public domain. You can write this character, at least what he was in Action Comics 1. He's skillful enough to do that. And he would just make money on it just from his name and him doing Superman. That's it. It's free money. Any of these guys could come over here. They wouldn't have to finish the story. They could do like part one, and part one never gets finished.
Yeah, well, I always think when that sort of happens, the first person who's going to do it is Ethan Van Sciver. It's a Superman's $1 million now. It's like it's his campaign, but yeah, I mean, he already played in it in the public domain, so he's probably going to join again. So, is that it? Anything else you got?
No, good
All right,
here.
spin a rack.
Out.
Out.